Hey guys, how's it going? I told y'all I'd do a video after the eclipse, and here we are doing the video after the eclipse. We're going to dig into a couple of scriptures and look at this. So, listen, I'm going to make sure everybody understands I'm not making fun of anybody, and I'm not pointing fingers at anybody specific. They already know who they are. And this isn't meant to, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess cast negative shade on anybody in particular. It's meant for to help us be sober minded about things. And so yesterday, if you didn't know about it or wasn't paying attention to it, we had a path of totality eclipse go through Texas and go through several several other states. People in Ohio got a good show. I think some people up in Canada got a good show. And there was a bunch of people out there that were going on about apocalypse is coming, economy is going to collapse, wars are going to happen, all these things they were saying that were going to be associated with this eclipse. And one of the big ones, too, they were saying was CERN is trying to open the bottomless pit. We already knew that. They've been doing that, trying to do that for years now. In fact, I think they cracked it open a few years ago, if the stories we heard about what happened are true. We already know it's going to happen because the Bible says it's going to happen. But a lot of people were taking Joel 2:31 out of context, not realizing that that whole chapter is about the tribulation. We're not in the tribulation. We're not in it. We're not in the seals. Contrary to what a lot of people say. They know who they are. We're not in the seals. Because the things that the Bible talks about during that time frame are going to affect every single human on the planet. Not all people are being affected by these things right now. Now, some people have popped up, a couple have popped up and said, look at all the terrible weather happening in the east part of the United States. It was all because of the eclipse. And you know what? They're right. It was because of the eclipse, but not for the reasons they think. Because people want there to be an apocalypse. They want everything to fall apart. They want it to happen. Why? Couldn't tell you. Some weird sense of sadomasochism. I don't know. But they're right. That weather was caused by the eclipse. So what happens if you have a stable air mass? And in the middle of that air mass, you create a vacuum of cool air. Because if you take something hot, create cool air, a cool air spot, what happens? Well, that cool air lowers the air density. Compresses the air density. The hot air expands the air molecules out. So that cool air is going to suck weather down into it. So when that totality passed over Texas, in the United States, that coolness, and it dropped by a lot of degrees. I mean, it was pretty dark here. It was very, very cool outside. You had hot air on both sides of that path. It sucked that hot air in to that cooled air. Well, then when it warmed back up again, what happened with all that air that got pulled in there? Well, it had to expand back out again, and because it tried to fill a void, then the void warmed back up and pushed it all back out. Well, what happens when you concentrate all that weather energy in a one single spot? It creates a front. It's a false front. And so that front is now traveling across the United States, kicking up all kinds of crazy weather because of all the moisture that there is. In front of that line is all kinds of storms, tornadoes, storm chasers are going crazy, having a blast. Behind that is massive humidity and more moisture is being drug in with it. And that's consequence why we have a bunch of rain coming tonight. So they're right. The eclipse did cause that, but not for the reasons they think. It's a normal weather pattern that happens. In fact, everywhere there's been an eclipse where it's gone super dark, the next day or even later that day, there's a ton of weather. It's normal. It's normal physics. But more importantly, I want to talk about, since we got that out of the way, signs in the sky or signs in the heavens. And what the Bible talks about that. We're going to touch on a couple of the scriptures here and dig into them in context on one of my Bible apps and see what's really going on here and whether we should be focusing on the sign or should we be focusing on the events that they are advertising. Luke 21:25 is where we're going to start. And there's a bunch in Luke 21 that we can go to. And there will be signs in the sun and moon and stars, and on the earth distress of nations in perplexity because of the roaring of the sea and the waves. What's the roaring of the sea and the waves? What's the sea and the waves? Not only does that reference the ocean, which that's happening right now, but it also references nations and people. So let's go to Luke 21:25. 21:25. So let's go up here. Let's see. So this is talking about the tribulation. Verse 18, but not a hair of your head shall be lost. By your patience, possess your souls. And then we get into the destruction of Jerusalem. But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its destruction is near. Jerusalem currently is surrounded by armies. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let those who are in the midst of her depart, and let not those who are in the country enter her. For these are the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. So if you know there's a specific prophecy about a specific event, so this is talking about multiple time frames here. It's not talking about a single time frame, but several. Before the trib, middle of the trib, and even possibly after the trib. So when you have specific events that are going to happen involving certain nations or groups, it just doesn't, you wake up one day and then the alarm goes off at 9:45 or 9:47 a.m. and all these things start happening. It just doesn't work that way. You have time of things building up to that. People setting laws in place, governments establishing certain guidelines, armies moving in different positions and getting ready to go. People's attitudes changing. So you have a build up to these events happening. That's what's happening with the tribulation. That's why so many people make the mistake of thinking we're in the seals or the tribulation now, because they see aspects of those things happening around the world. That's normal, because we should have a build up to those things. If 3 countries on the whole planet have locusts come and eat everything on the ground, that doesn't mean that that's a direct reference to what's happening in the tribulation and we're in the tribulation. Now, if the locusts come and eat in every nation, then you've got something that's tribulation worthy. But it'd be natural for us to start to see those things. Israel surrounded by armies. She's been surrounded by armies for 4 years. Just because that's happened doesn't mean it's in the tribulation. But we'll have a buildup. The armies must be in place, present, ready, already in position, armament in place before the event will unfold. So there's going to be a natural buildup to these events that are talked about in the tribulation and what Luke 21 is referencing. Verse 23, but woe to those who are pregnant. Remember what we read this morning? But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days, for there will be great distress in the land and wrath upon this people. That's the tribulation. Remember what Jesus talked about in Luke 23 when he said, weep for yourselves. The day is coming when, it'd be better if you didn't. Blessed are those who don't have kids and haven't nursed, because they don't have to watch their children suffer and die. That's what this is talking about. Verse 24, and they will fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem will be trampled by Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. So he's jumping around the timeline on how things are going to unfold. That's happening right now. And there will be signs in the sun. Just happened. In the moon, just happened. And in the stars, still happening. And on the earth, distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring. So what's happening is normal. It's normal indicators of what's coming. I told you guys before, when I was a kid, I only ever remember watching 1 lunar eclipse, and I think I remember 2 solar eclipses. And this has been since way back when I was early teens. And now it's like every couple of years we're seeing that stuff. The supermoons. We only ever saw 2 or 3 supermoons when I was a kid. It's only been in the last 5 years we've seen all these supermoons. I don't ever remember seeing them before. I don't think anybody ever paid attention to it. If they did, I didn't know about it, for sure. But that don't mean nothing. But now all of a sudden everybody's hyper-focused on it. Well, here's the thing. They've probably always been there, just nobody paid attention to it. But now all of a sudden there's a big emphasis on it. All the comets, Oumuamua, they're talking about Oumuamua again. Supposedly somebody at NASA saying, or somewhere saying, the mothership is over the Earth and is sending down probes. Okay? With all the telescopes and the cameras and the satellites and everything you have pointed up there, Why has there been no video or pictures of it? If that's the case, somebody better be showing us something. I don't believe a single word of it. And it doesn't matter anyway. They can't do anything until we're taken out of the way, until the restrainer is removed. Satan cannot do what he wants to do. But the signs are normal. All the blood moon thing, that's all normal. It's all normal. Look, I fell for this stuff too. But it didn't take real long to figure out, wait a minute, we're focusing on the wrong thing. Because if the signs are here, don't focus on the signs. Focus on what the signs are showing you is coming. And what is that? Jesus Christ. There's a movie, Bruce Lee movie. And what was it called? It was the one where he went over to that island and was fighting at that. I forget the name of it. He was teaching somebody. And he had the guy, he told him something about looking where the finger is pointing. And he's looking at his finger. And he smacks him on the head. And he says, don't focus on the finger or you miss the glory of the heavens. So he was telling him, don't hyper-focus on a small point, but see everything. So we're hyper-focusing on a single sign when we should be looking at everything the sign is actually indicating or pointing to. And what is that? The coming of the Lord. That's what we're watching for. Not the sign. The sign just shows us it's coming. We focus on what's coming. So when a woman is pregnant and she starts to have the birth pains, her water breaks and everything, are we paying attention to the signs? No. There's a baby coming. We're watching for the baby. The signs are just pointing the way. Men's hearts, verse 26, failing them for fear and the expectation of those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. That's the end of the tribulation. Now, verse 28, when these things begin to happen. When did that happen? Technically, it happened in 1948 when Israel became a nation. But when have we really seen the uptick in this stuff? About 7 years ago. Now, when these things begin to happen, look up and lift up your heads because your redemption draws nigh. He's telling you, when you see these signs, look up for your redemption. The signs are pointing to your redemption. You don't focus on the sign. Hey, look, there's a sign. Cool. Whenever you see the sign, 15 miles to New Braunfels, Texas, do you pull off right there in front of the sign? No. The sign is telling you where New Braunfels is coming up. So these signs are just telling us of what's coming. We focus on what's coming, not the sign. But what people are doing is focusing on the signs, trying to speak things into existence so that they'll happen. Kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? Kind of sounds like charismatics. Look up because your redemption draws near. And then he goes to the parable of the fig tree. 1948, boom. We see indicators. Signs in the heavens. All right, Luke 21:11. Okay, let's go back up to Luke. Verse 7, Luke 21:7. So they asked him, saying, Teacher, when will these things be, and what sign? See, they were focused on the signs. What sign will there be when these things are about to take place? And he said, take heed that you not be deceived. He's very instantly saying, don't be deceived. There's going to be a lot of signs. Don't focus on the signs. Focus on the event they're pointing to. Take heed you be not deceived, for many will come in my name, saying, I am he, and the time has drawn near. Therefore, do not go after them. Don't listen to the people who are going to lie to you. Don't hyper-focus on one single thing. You know what to look for because I'm going to tell you what to look for. Beware of those people saying that they are Jesus and the ones saying the time has drawn near. Look, there's another sign. It's about to happen, guys. But when you hear of wars and commotions, do not be terrified. For these things must come to pass, but the end will not come immediately. These signs have to happen first. Then he said to them, nations will rise against nation. The word used in the Greek is ethnos. It's ethnicity against ethnicity. There will be fighting within the nations. And kingdom against kingdom. That's like America against Canada. And there will be great earthquakes in various places. Check famines and pestilences, check. And there will be fearful sights and great signs from heaven, check, check, check. All the boxes are checked. But before all these things, they will lay their hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues and prisons. You will be brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake. That's already happened. So all the stuff on the list, we have. It's all checked off. And it all started 2,000 years ago. But it will turn out for you as an occasion for testimony. Therefore, settle it in your hearts, not to meditate beforehand on what you will answer. For I will give you a mouth and wisdom, with which all your adversaries will not be able to contradict or resist. You will be betrayed even by parents and brothers, relatives and friends, and they will put some of you to death, and you will be hated by all for my name's sake. But not a hair of your head will be lost. Some of us, I lost a bunch of mine. By your patience, possess your souls. Hang on. The Lord is coming. Let's trust him. So we have Genesis, we have Luke 21 again. Jeremiah 10:2. Let's go there. All right. So Jeremiah 10:2 says, thus says the Lord, do not learn the way of the Gentiles. Are we Gentiles now that we're saved? Nope. All are one in Christ Jesus. Do not be dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the Gentiles are dismayed at them. Who would be the Gentiles in the house of faith? Who would be the Gentiles? It's not the ones that believe. It's the ones that don't believe. It's the earth dwellers that are the Gentiles. They're estranged from God. So he's telling us, don't pay attention to that stuff. Don't be dismayed at those signs. That eclipse that happened, it's an eclipse. That's it. If anything was going to happen after that, it wouldn't be because of the eclipse. And that's what they believe for some reason. It's because that's what the Lord's will is, and that's what's going to happen. The Gentiles become dismayed at them. People are freaking out. You should have seen the traffic. Oh, wow. Somebody got a picture. They actually pulled off the road and took a picture. Highway 10, eastbound, 100% clear. The picture had like 3 cars in view. Westbound, bumper to bumper. Some people, it took them hours to get out of the hill country. Why would they do that? Why would they do that to themselves? Don't worry about it. For the customs, verse 3, of the peoples are futile. For one cuts a tree from the forest, the work of the hands of the workman, with the axe. They decorate it with silver and gold. They fasten it with nails and hammers so that it will not topple. They're going to follow after their stuff. They are upright like a palm tree. They're following after the gods of their making. They turned this into an opportunity to worship the eclipse. And they cannot speak, they must be carried, because they cannot go by themselves. Do not be afraid of them, for they cannot do evil, nor can they do any good. Amazing. Let's see. Psalm 19:1. There's a good one. 19:1. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Simple. Easy. So that eclipse, that was a declaration of the glory of God. The earth shows his handiwork. Are we to focus on the event or focus on what the event is pointing to? Let's see. Joel 2:30. This is the one everybody was getting all bent out of shape about. I think they made a great mistake by taking this out of its context. So let's go to Joel 2:30. And I will show you wonders in the heavens and in earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. It was actually verse 31, my mistake. It was verse 31 that they were taking out of context. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord. Okay. Sun turns dark, eclipse. Moon turns to blood. That means there's going to be stuff in the air to make it look like it's red. Or it's going to have a subdued reflection. We've had a bunch of them. Ironically, the last time we had the big cluster of blood moons was back in 1948. And then we had them again here just a couple of years ago. Interesting. But they took this as this was what this was referenced. Okay, what about the previous verse? And I will show you wonders in heaven and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. We want that? Is that what we wanted? No, of course not. And then what was even more important, and I covered this already, when you go to the top of the chapter, it says the day of the Lord. This is talking about the tribulation. This whole chapter is about the tribulation. And that's what we want to reference in relating to an eclipse. The fact that it kind of passed over 7 cities named Nineveh. And when you look a little closer, you realize that most of those cities were in the very outskirts of its range. The eclipse didn't pass directly over them. In fact, most of the cases it passed just near them, but not over them. So they took all that to mean this was something special, and it wasn't. People were reading more into this than what they should. Matthew 24:30. This is a real good one. Matthew 24 is extremely misunderstood by all of us. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn. And they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. You go back in history and look up clouds of heaven. The only thing that I can find that has ever been referenced as the clouds of heaven is the Milky Way. Ever. Funny enough, there's a bunch of really big, well-known telescopes pointed right at that, and a bunch of other stuff pointed at it, watching the Milky Way. Why? They say, we're looking for life. They're looking for Jesus, because they know that's where he's coming from. The Lucifer telescope in Arizona is pointed directly at it. They're watching for the Lord, because they know that's where he's going to be coming from. The sign of the Son of Man, I've covered this in multiple videos, especially in the past. It's related to, by Jesus, as the sign of Jonah. What's the sign of Jonah? A man in the belly of a fish 3 days and 3 nights? No. Go back in history. You can see, looking historically, the sign of Jonah was a fish with a rope coming out of its mouth. And that rope, at that time, symbolized Jonah getting spit out. And that was how it was for a couple thousand years. And then when Jesus went, they went to those carvings. Some of them, most of them, carved another fish and connected the rope. They made the sign Pisces. What's the sign of the Son of Man? Well, it'll appear in heaven. Pisces. How funny that it coincides with the sun going dark. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, tribulation, keyword, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. How interesting that the only way you can see the constellation Pisces is if the sun goes down. If the sun is darkened. Because Pisces currently, if you look at the big wheel that has all these constellations that talk about certain generational time frames, and it's funny enough, and interestingly enough, each one of those signs covers a 2,000-year period. The sign of Pisces, or that age, came in when Jesus was born. He was born under that. And it sits right behind the sun. You can't see it unless the sun is dark. How interesting. The sun will be darkened. Suddenly you'll be able to see that constellation. Now it does say the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven will be shaken. But that doesn't mean it won't. It will be unviewable. It may be viewable for a short time, but look what the result is from this happening. And this is what they want to happen. They want this to happen. That's what they were pointing at with this, that this was going to be the sign of the Son of Man. All the tribes on the earth will mourn. Every single person on the earth will mourn. I don't think we want this. I don't think we want this. Let's see. Joel 2:31. Here's a more important one, 2 Timothy 3:1-5. But understand this, that in the last days there will come times of difficulty. Check. For people will be lovers of self. Check. Lovers of money. proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having the appearance of godliness but denying its power. Avoid such people. Check every one of them off the list. And funny enough, that really kicked off hardcore in the last 50 years. It's really been bad the last 10, the last 20 technically. Really bad. I wonder if we're in those last days. Kind of sounds like it. Jesus goes in John 4:48. Jesus said to them, unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe. Let's go to John 4:48. Looks like a real good place maybe to start to close this down. So let's go up a couple here. Verse 46, so Jesus came again to Cana of Galilee, where he had made the water wine. And there was a certain nobleman whose son was sick at Capernaum. When he heard that Jesus had come out of Judea into Galilee, he went to him and implored him to come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. Here was Jesus' response. Then Jesus said to him, unless you people see signs and wonders, you will by no means believe. Why would that be a response? Hope I didn't mess up my recording. Why would that be his response to somebody wanting his son healed? Maybe because he knew we would be enduring stuff like this right now. Unless people see signs and wonders, they won't believe. Unless they can take a normal process of physics, like an eclipse, unless they can turn that into something more important than what it is, they won't believe. There may be people that see this video, they get mad at me because I said these things, because I'm taking away their object of faith. I'm trying to replace that object with Jesus Christ. Take the eclipse out of the equation and put Christ in his place. Your object of faith should be him. The nobleman said to him, sir, come down before my child dies. Why didn't he respond to that? Verse 48. Verse 48 seems like it sticks out all by itself. That's why I got it highlighted. It seems to stick out all by itself. It doesn't fit in this. Weird. And then he replies, go your way, your son lives. So the man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him and went his way. They never even addressed what he said. That seems like it's not supposed to be there. But look at today. Look at how it is today. It's exactly how it is. All right, so I made my point, I think, I hope. Why are we going to look at a sign instead of looking at what the sign points to? Why are we going to look at some kind of thing that we're going to mark out and make like a harbinger of evil and doom? Apocalypse. So many people were talking, oh, no, here comes the apocalypse, guys. Really? Because the last, I don't know, thousands, just in my lifetime, the last thousands of eclipses never brought me bad stuff. If you go worldwide, there's anywhere from 2 to 4 eclipses a month. Every month. Most of them are over water. Nobody sees them but the ships. So why are we taking this one singular event because it just happens to fall into a certain area? It happens to be a tiny bit different than the rest of them. Why are we turning this into something super when the Lord tells us specifically, and most of what we read was his words, there's going to be signs. And these signs are pointing to me. They're not, don't focus on that. Focus on me. So don't look at the signs. The signs are irrelevant. It's just a signpost. You have a straight road with no turns and no intersections. And there's a sign. This town in this many miles. You knock that sign down, are people going to not be able to find the town? Of course not. The road still leads to the town. Take the signs away, it's irrelevant. Everybody knows that road points there. They're following their map or whatever. They know that it goes there. And there's no intersection. There are no turns they have to make. It's a straight road. If you go to Fort Irwin, California, where we do NTC training in the military, there's one single road that goes out there to it. It's way out in the desert, in the hills. And you get on this, I think it's the straightest road in America. You get on this road, it is dead straight. There are no turns. So if you make the turn at an intersection, and when you get on that road, there's no turns off this road. It only goes to one place. Knock all the signs down. You think people are going to be able to miss it? You think they're going to drive past it? No, it dead ends at it. You're going to drive right into Fort Irwin. So the signs are nowhere near as important as the destination. So what's the destination? Christ and his kingdom, heaven, the throne room of the Lord. So don't focus on the sign. Focus on him. Take the sign and go, oh, cool sign. There's another one on the list of signs that are pointing us to him. Lord, I glorify you in your name for showing us these wonderful things, reminding us of the promises you gave. When you see something like that and people start freaking out, first thing you do is go to the Bible and see what the Lord said about it. If he told you to hyper-focus on that, hyper-focus on it. If he told you not to worry about that, don't fear. We read those verses in this video and in others recently. Don't fear. Don't be perplexed like the rest of the world. Walk in faith. What do? We don't fear. We walk in faith. And like we did with Psalm 23 here just the other day, it says it perfectly. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. What can man do to me? Nothing. What can an eclipse do to me? Nothing. Nothing will come in between me and my Lord Jesus Christ. So don't hyper-focus on the signs. Stay sober-minded. Focus on the word. Focus on the Lord. Because that is the whole point of all this. That's why all these signs are in place. Him. So the sign is nothing unless the Lord is attached to it. The sign means nothing. Take a sign. This town in this many miles, drive down that road, there's no town. The sign now becomes irrelevant, but people are going to focus on that sign. And there's a place, it used to be there. It's not there now. I think they took the sign down. In Missouri. And when you cross the Merrimack River going to the state park, you go up this, it's literally up a mountain. And it's a steep road. I had this little Ford Courier 4-wheel drive. I put some big old bucket tires on it. And of course, it had no gears. So it took forever to get up this mountain. But we were going up there to go four-wheeling because there was a place there called EBO. E-B-O. I don't even know if you can find it on a map. There's nothing there but a tiny 3-room or 4-room school and a makeshift post office. That's it. There's nothing up there. It is nothing. I think they closed EBO's down. That's what we called it was EBO's, but the town is called EBO. And there's a sign there. And when you drive, you see the sign. It just says EBO, E-B-O. You drive right through it. And you're like, I drove past it, like 15 miles. I'm like, where was the town? We never saw the town. So we turned around and went back. There's a tiny schoolhouse I don't think anybody uses. If they do, it's a shock. And there was a makeshift post office. And if you didn't know, if you didn't take the time to really examine the surroundings, you wouldn't know there was a town there. It's just a sign. The sign is irrelevant if you don't know there's a town there. The sign is irrelevant if there's nothing there that is a result of the evidence the sign is proving. So if there's an eclipse in the sky, that's a sign to something, but nothing comes that sign points to. Is the sign irrelevant? No, it's irrelevant. The sign is not relevant. So don't hyper-focus on the wrong thing. Make the Lord your focus. And let the signs come and go. The eclipse is over, everything's back to normal. Everybody's cool. And I guarantee you, none of them people who came up there and started talking all that trash are going to do a video and say, hey, I apologize, y'all. I made a mistake. I jumped the gun. It was just an eclipse. None of them will come apologize. They're going to wait for the next sign. They're looking and searching the maps and the apps right now to find the next sign they can point to and say, look, look, look. Because that's what they're hoping for. Well, here's my message to all those people. If any of them happen to see this, here's my message, and I'll end with this. One of these days, you're going to get exactly what you wish for. And it'll only be then that you'll realize it's not what you really wanted. And you'll realize the grave mistake you made by putting yourself in that situation. Because the Lord may just give you exactly what you want. You want to be in the tribulation? You go right ahead. When the Lord comes, I want to go with him. But if you keep wishing for disaster, one day it's coming. And you just may find yourself in the middle of it and realize, I made a terrible mistake. So let's put our focus where it should be, on Christ. I love you guys. I thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.